welcome to Fresh Brew Marketing's In Conversation With. Today, I'm talking to Rachel Brown, and we're talking about life in lockdown and what it might look like as we kind of move through this as business people, business owners, but also as members of our local community. So stay tuned. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. It's wonderful.
Oh, it is my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Good. So I wanted to talk to you about you. You are a really active digital champion within the community. You're involved in all kinds of things, but it's led to you wearing a number of different kind of hats. So tell us a little bit more about all the things that you're involved in before lockdown and now. You know, what are some of the things you're busy with at the moment?
Okay. So my business is, as you said, I'm a digital champion. So it's mainly digital skills tuition to predominantly the older generation. There's a few younger ones in there in their 40s that pipe up once in a while and just need sort of heads up on how to use Windows 10 because they've been dragged into having to use that. But mostly it's people inviting people to help them how to use their iPads and tablets and that sort of thing. And that's one of my roles. I also have a community member pioneer role for the co-op, which is very much being out there looking for, I'm a coordinator, so I look for member pioneers who connect community projects together, and it's an amazing project. I'll talk about that if you need me to later. And also I do a role just as a very, very part-time role in my local co-op store, because that helps me get out in the community and has a bit of focus there, because it's quite hard, lockdown aside, which I know I hope we'll get onto. When you're working independently, the discipline and all of that is very, it's quite hard when you're in your own space. So I took that job on a while ago just to get out and work with other people. So they're my three main hats.
Okay, so if we focus on digital one-to-one for a second, so things were very different beforehand. You were serving customers with very specific questions. How has that changed since the lockdown has happened? Has it changed? Obviously, we all have moved towards this massive reliance on digital now to be able to work remotely and all that kind of stuff. Have you seen any of that happen in your digital one-to-one stuff? And how have you personally had to change the way that you work to be able to continue doing what you did before?
Okay, so digital one-to-one has pretty much closed down because my work was very much on a one-to-one basis, sitting at a table. This is how you use a tablet. This is how you press the buttons. Obviously, with social distancing, there's no chance I can do that. And I always felt my job was done when they knew how to do it and how to work it. So there's that element to it that was keeping me mainly busy. The good side to it is that those people who I've taught can ring me now and say, oh, I need to up my game on how I'm using my tablet, because I've taught them how to access their emails and I've taught them how to do the very basic stuff that you and I would deem as basic. And we've never really moved on to anything other than that because they've always been quite fearful. And now they're kind of like, right, I'm forced into videoing my family, and now I'm willing to learn, because a lot of my clients have been resistant to learning, and they kind of felt that they had to get into the digital world, mainly for banks closing, prescriptions being ordered online. So a lot of the stuff that I've helped them learn about, they've had to use now, which has been really great.
That's
I know
amazing.
that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really plan for something like that. So beforehand, no one knew that this was coming. So you've equipped them before even knowing that you've needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of new clients, obviously I can't do that. And I think with my other jobs taking over, I've not felt the need to diversify digital one-to-one. I could have created how-to videos that maybe put them on DVD, which I think a lot of, I think there's a campaign on telly that BT are doing something like that, but it's not I didn't need to diversify enough. All I did was step back, and that was suitable for me, and just support the clients who I'd got on the step ladder, and I could help them. I mean, there's been one particular client that I've physically gone and seen. I know that I got a hint that perhaps his laptop had been affected with a virus in itself. It's just viruses everywhere. And I think that, and we were able to do that in a socially distancing, safe way. And so my job to support the existing clients has been able to continue. So I've had a mixture of both aspects to it, really.
That transitions nicely. So the fact that you've had to take the step back because you physically cannot be next to your client, which is what is needed, that's kind of led you to be able to throw yourself even more into the community side of things and the other community development stuff that you do. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Tell us more about your community pioneer role with Co-op. Correct me where I'm wrong, and how that has kind of enabled you to be really involved in some of the other things you've been doing locally.
Okay, so the minute, let's go back a little bit to the member pioneer role. So as a coordinator, as I said, I need to find the right type of people who can support community projects. I'm new to the role as a coordinator because the member pioneer program from Co-op is relatively new, and so they've been piloting different ways, and so this way of having coordinators like myself and then member pioneers working on the ground with the community projects
it's live, don't worry about it.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought I'd put that on airplane mode, and it's my sister. It's my sister.
My email, because my emails have been bonging as I've been carrying on. So go for it.
Put it on airplane mode. Yeah, it's a new project that the Co-op have been. The Co-op are kind of ahead of their game with wanting to support the community, and so with the coronavirus and lockdown, social distancing, the Co-op have really been able to come into their own and say, right, this is what we're made for. We're here to support the community.
Yeah.
As mine is a relatively new role, I dived into my own community as almost with a member pioneer hat on, so I could see what needs to be helped within our local community. I wanted to be able to use the Co-op as a reputable and recognizable brand within the community, so they had a bit of stability. And although this is a separate role to my store role, the community don't need to know that, and they're familiar with me. And so when this all started, I put myself forward to the Bedminster Town Council to see what I could do to help, and it was obviously a good time to do that, because I was then assigned to support and co-coordinate with another town councillor the efforts to get food and produce out to the vulnerable and those who were self-isolating at the time. So talk
to me a little bit more about that. What is that involved? Being involved, like literally hands-on now, getting the food out,
yeah,
the deliveries out.
So we're really lucky here in Bedminster that we've got lots of independent, not lots, but enough independent shops, the butchers, fruit and veg. You know, we've got these services that still wanted to supply the customers, supply the community, but obviously due to the social distancing they weren't able to do that. So the town council resilience team put a call out for volunteers, and then we were assigned a group of volunteers. We then set up a system with the stores that customers could call them directly, and then we've deployed volunteers who then go and take all the produce out to the community. And it's been a fluid setup, but it's been a really good working relationship between us as the coordinators. The shops are still being able to trade, which is incredible, and the volunteers have had something to do that they've been desperate to help. I mean, it was a matter of, I don't know, 24 hours, and we had 100 volunteers that were then deployed to different departments. And so I'm really privileged to be a part of that incredible effort that the town council has created, and I feel very privileged that I'm I'm not in the thick because I'm not doing the deliveries, but we walked the walk first. We did do, us coordinators went and did the deliveries so we could suss out how it was going to work, how the customer, you know, dropping the bag, stepping away, and woohoo, thank you, and off we go. And I think we've diversed a little bit, and we've changed it around a little bit, and now 5 weeks on our volunteers are great, and because of technology we're able to communicate with them via WhatsApp groups, and we've built a really good relationship with the volunteers, and they feel that they can trust us, and then we've got a good report back, we can report back to the town council. And so I've rambled a little bit there, but it's sort of, we're a tiny part of what the Bedminster Resilience team have been able to do for the community, but I feel very privileged to have been a part of that.
And what is amazing is how we you know, for the first time, certainly since I've lived in the community, I've seen so many different parts of the community come together out of necessity, and bringing skills and expertise and all kinds of things, and, you know, together to form this united, you know, support group that can deliver one vision, one valuable something, you know, and that's kind of been encouraging to me, and seeing that also replicated in so many different communities and towns all over the UK, and I'm sure the world. But it is, as you say, it is something to be really proud of, to be part of that. But now let's talk about you personally for a second, if you don't mind. What has been, just before we were chatting very quickly about how personally you have changed the way you think about things and how you work, etc. So let's chat about that for a little bit. What has been some of your biggest challenges since the lockdown? How have you started to think about things differently in the way that you work, or maybe even how you think you will work when this is all done? You know, talk to me a bit about that.
I think there's been lots of changes for me, sort of psychologically, mentally, emotionally, you know, all of those things. It's been a real interesting and positive experience through a really horrific time. And so first of all, just tapping into what you were saying about the community, I live in the town, but I'm on the very edge of it, really. And I've always liked that. I'm on the end of my road, so I know some of the people at my street, but I'm very private, despite my house being quite open to the sort of the main area. But myself, I keep myself to myself, and I've kind of liked that up to now, and that's been fine. I realised I wanted to be a little bit more involved, which is why I took the job in the shop, and that was enough for me. I'd go and see everyone, be there for a few hours, then come home, shut the door, and just be in my life again. What's been great about this for me is that I tend to like to do things for a purpose. So I'm not a going down the pub. I'm not a sociable person in that sense. And so being able to have a purpose to be involved in the community has brought me closer to the community, and so my experience from this, being involved with the town council, and sort of, even though it's on a voluntary basis, it's been in a working capacity, that's really helped me feel more connected with the town in which I live in. So that's been really beneficial to me. Something, as I said, I didn't know I needed or wanted until I'm in it. And so that's been great. From a working point of view, I'm not the most disciplined. So working from home is not, I've always found quite difficult. You know me very well to know that I am a shiny penny, I'll go and do that instead. I'm a procrastinator, and I will very happily find something else to do. And I've sort of forced myself for that not to happen. But that has been because I know it can happen, because I'm allowed to sit and do nothing if I want to. I've chosen not to, and it's been a bit of a reverse psychology for me. I think because Lucy, who's 13, doing her work and has been disciplined herself, because she's home the whole time. I'm in my office, she's doing her work. I don't feel this need to go and sort of fill her time with fun stuff, because that's not what we're about. And so that's sort of given me permission that it's to do some work and not worry about her. There's been lots of different things like that, that it has brought discipline, structure to my working day. And I wasn't expecting that either.
You know what's interesting that comes to mind as I'm listening to you talking, is if I think about my own working environment. So I've been working by myself, for myself, for a while, and in the beginning, when I got to, I'm used to working like this, you know, get up in the morning, walk the dogs, have breakfast, come to the office, sit down and do a day's work. And since the lockdown, a lot of the work changed. Some of my clients, you know, closed their doors temporarily. You know, so the work kind of ebbed and flowed. I was busy on some days, I was quiet on some days, but the days that I was quiet, I felt like I had to come and sit down in front of my computer. And even if I was just sitting staring at the screen, I had to be here, because I felt terribly guilty about taking the time off, and, you know, as if I was on holiday. It was such a weird mental adjustment to this new kind of thing. Did you ever experience that similar kind of almost guilt about not working, or working when you shouldn't be, or something like that, when you started getting used to this lockdown period?
I found it the opposite. So I would, and this is where the discipline comes in. When I was supposed to be sitting down and working like you, I've worked for myself now for a while, yeah. and I've dabbled in business. You know, I've sort of come up with new things and go, oh, I'm going to do that instead. And I used to sit at the computer and be online, go on Facebook, and that's, you know, and hey, I was working. And I would find at the end of the day that I thought I'd been working, but actually hadn't achieved anything.
Yeah.
Now, Lucy and I stop for lunch. You know, we're now in this routine. I come in, I've got a separate office from my bedroom and whatever, and from her. So I come in and do my work. She gets up and does her work. And then we kind of then meet for lunch, sit in front of the telly, do that, and then off we go again. We're back and do our work. And so I haven't felt guilty about the downtime, because what else am I meant to do? You know, it's now got permission. My sister will say that she is a very quiet, I don't know if she would say she's antisocial. I certainly wouldn't say she's antisocial, but she likes her own space. And she, you know, she's just relishing in the fact that she doesn't have to force herself to go out. And I think I understand what that is. You know, you're kind of recognizing this, what I was saying to you earlier, that I am recognizing that I like my own space, and it's okay for me to stop and be on social media if I want to, but I must detach that and remove that from my working time. And therefore it's given me more discipline to work, and I've now given myself permission to go and watch telly or do something in my downtime. It's not all bled into one. So it's the opposite to what you're experiencing, I think.
So if we look forward now, obviously we are relatively used to this weirdness. At some stage it will end. We don't know when, but how do you think the way that you work in future will change or will be different given what you've had to go through now? I'm asking you to kind of predict future behavior, but how do you think you will approach things differently, you know, looking at what we've had to go through?
Well, I think this has changed the landscape for work for everybody, don't you think?
Yeah, totally.
So I suppose I can't predict what that's going to be like, and because of the nature of my co-op member pioneer role, it's a remote role anyway. But I suppose how it will make me, I will definitely work smarter. I'm already working smarter. I know that's a bit of a buzzword, but that is, you know, I'm able to be in more control of looking at my emails, not looking at them at midnight, which is that's where it all bled into one, as I said before. If I shut down my work emails, that's it. And so I hope that I'll be able to continue with that, which will be very different working to pre-lockdown. And I think also I've learned to be a bit more confident in myself as well. So I'm not craving to go out and be with other people, but now I feel I've got something to talk about, and I feel I've got a bit more value, which I've never really felt before. I think that will be much happier and much more confident going out and promoting myself and my business, and as well as the co-pioneer role. I just feel that I've got a bit more validation of what I'm doing, which is weird. I don't know where that's come from.
You know what's interesting is the thing that's really been at the forefront of my mind lately, and I don't know why, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's almost like we've all been stripped down to the same level. We've all been forced to go simple, to be quiet, to be in the same boat. And it's almost like a reset button that, and looking at the way that, well, both of us really, but especially you have been involved in the community, the local community. It's almost like there's stuff that I'm sitting here going, but that doesn't matter anymore, because there are far more important basic human needs that need to be looked after. I mean, I come from Africa, where you are faced with human need every day. And coming to the UK, it's not as obvious all the time. I mean, in South Africa, you drive out of the airport and there's a massive informal settlement where people are living really below the breadline, but something that's been so important in what we've been involved in is looking at, actually, there's so much stuff that just doesn't matter. The inability to communicate with someone. I am so starved and hungry to be able to go out and have a cup of coffee with you, for example, and just sit across from you at a table and just talk, but that kind of stuff I'm realizing is so fundamentally important to me individually, because that's how I'm wired. Being able to deliver food to someone who is unable to get their own food, or someone who is so incredibly lonely that just wants a phone call. There's so much stuff that has kind of taught me to think of life differently and what I'm doing, and assign importance and relevance and priority to things in such a different way. So
I was utterly with you on the reset thing, because it feels like there's always been a hierarchy. For me anyway, I've always felt that I've not been as good as the next person because I'm not a scientist, or I'm not this sort of high-flying thing. And it's as the word is right, it's leveled everybody, that it doesn't matter what the title of your job is. You have an important part to play in this world, and whether that is staying in because you're doing as you're told, knocking, yelling at the person next door. I mean, I did the old thing, and when this first happened, about putting the leaflet around all the neighbours, and just to say, we're down there, number 32, don't forget, if you need us, kind of thing. And actually a couple of people did ring and say, thanks, we don't, but thanks for doing it. And for me, that is far more important for me, to know that those people know I can do something for them, than anything else. It's not important what I do, how I earn my money, and how I feed my kids. None of that is important. The important thing is the value that's brought to me is kindness is the biggest thing in here.
Absolutely. And so if we look then at the positives that have come out of this lockdown thing, what in your experience now has been the biggest encouragement for you? What have you seen that's kind of gone, okay, validated, encouraged, we can do this? Has there been any story or any anecdote that you can think of?
Oh God,
putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you are a bit. I think Oh God, I don't know. That's where my blimmin' iron gate comes down, and I think now I'm on the spot now. I can't think what to say. I'm afraid. Do you mean for me personally, or what I've seen in
Whichever,
a
something,
big?
something maybe that you've seen, whether it's something else that someone's done or, you know, in your own life. I think, you know, for me personally, if I look at something like the way that so many people have just come together, you know, no fuss, no, again, I say hierarchy, but no conscious, you know, awareness of levels or superiority or anything like. It's literally like, you know, you've got one guy driving the bus, you've got someone else packing the fruit and veg boxes, you've got, you know, the pharmacy saying, look, we need to get this medicine out. Okay, cool, I'll get in my car and I'll drive. You know, it's that to me has been such an encouragement that I kind of feel, okay, I know that if ever something like this has to happen again, we will be okay. You know, the community does come together. It can come together because it has, you know. So that to me has been such an eye opener throughout this whole thing. And I think a lot of businesses will be looking at this period feeling absolutely you know, desperate about what their next stage is. But I think there's so much in here that we need to kind of keep our eyes open and say, well, where is the opportunity? Fine, maybe my business as it is might not be able to keep its doors open. Maybe things will be completely different, but there are opportunities and there are signs that will enable me to kind of look at things in a very different way. It might be completely rough on me, but you know, it's not the end. It might be the end of this business as it is now, but it's not the end of things as I know it. You know, there is opportunity.
Yeah, I think definitely it's opened. So for me professionally, it's opened doors in terms of other people, like the town council, knowing a bit more about what I do co-op wise, but also as digital skills thing. But I think I think another reason why I'm hesitant to answer the question is that we are very lucky where we are. The community resilience team has jumped on it straight away. So we haven't, that I know of, got any members of our community feeling desperate. You know, we've got space to go out in, and I'm very mindful that we are in a better position than what others may be in, you know, and not in the types of community where we live in. And so for me, it's the same, because I've been working, I've not really experienced the lockdown as a lockdown.
Yes.
You know, and because Lucy is so well behaved and she's nice to be with, I've not had that. I want to use the metaphor pulling my hair out. Obviously a bad we should say I was like this before lockdown.
Oh man, you're amazing. Okay.
But
thank goodness you've not had to experience that anxiety.
I know, yeah. I mean, I just don't feel that I've been hit with anything that I'm sure the people have. My parents are okay, my sister's okay, even Mitch in his situation, he's handling it really well. And just to put some context in there, obviously he's got his own learning difficulties, he has his own anxieties, he's living in a independent steps to independent program where he's living with adults with learning difficulties like himself, learning how to be independent. And so he's having to experience lockdown. And I think I was expecting him to be far more troubled than he is. But even they have, the people that work with him have found a way for him to be able to cope with the situation by giving him jobs outside. And so in every corner of my life at the moment, touch wood, every word possible, I'm very fortunate. And so it's difficult to, I'm not kind of craving that light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm not in any despair. And I'm very aware that there are millions that are. And so I think that's why I'm struggling to answer your question as to what's on the other side, because I'm happy to go with the flow. When lockdown lifts, in whichever form that is, I feel confident that the community know I'm around, you know, I'm here. I feel that I can be relied upon, which is something special, you know, when you feel needed, or you feel that you have achieved and and somebody can call upon you for something as important as this. I feel that I've presented myself enough for that. So should this happen again, I feel okay. I've proved myself to that. I'm afraid, and because my business isn't in as desperate need as others, it's a really difficult question to answer because I don't feel I'm in a bad place.
Well, that's a good thing. And that's
of course, that is a good thing, but I feel a little bit guilty about that. No, isn't that stupid? I'm so like, sorry, I'm all right.
I'm all right. No, I think you touch on a good point there. I think there are people that are feeling okay about it. There are people, and we've worked with them, that are not, and that's my turn now. My phone, that is, let me just decline this call. It's all live. That is our fantastic fellow friend from the town council.
Lovely.
But I think there are certainly a lot of people that are struggling, and that's where it's been encouraging to kind of work alongside these people and support them, because the one thing we need to realize is that the community is not just about individuals. Someone's stuck at home. Community, a large part of what we've been doing is also to support the local business community that is really, people that are struggling because there is no business, people that are inundated because they're the only business. One would think, amazing, that's nirvana, but actually we look at our local greengrocer, we look at our butcher, where suddenly they are being pounced on from all directions and they physically cannot cope. And so we as a team have been able to help and support them, and support the community. So there are a lot of different aspects to what this community spirit is, and I think that's the encouraging thing, is that as a community we've come together to be able to help everybody, no matter where they are or who they are. So
yeah,
we can take
and been versatile, and been open. I think the team working down at the town council, the businesses, I would hope would recognize that the team have been open to the suggestions in which they've put. So it's not been it's our way or the highway.
No.
We've not said, right, you tell us what you want and we'll do it in a sort of a dismissive way.
Yep.
It's been really, really workable from both sides.
Collaborative,
very collaborative,
and also, the whole thing before you spoke about buzzword earlier, but before the whole business buzzword was being business agile. Well, we've had to live and breathe agility throughout this period. If we haven't been agile, we wouldn't, absolutely not even able to cope. So it's really interesting seeing the new normal, the new, all of this stuff we've been speaking about for a long time, but we've never really experienced it ourselves physically, and now we have. So, Rachel, I'm aware that our time is up. Thank you so much for joining me today. I could carry on talking about this stuff all day, and you know what? I might actually call you back at some stage for some more conversations. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel very privileged that you've asked me. Privilege is my word of the day.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. I'll catch up with you after this. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. And if you want to know more about what's happening in Fresh Brew Marketing's In Conversation With, well, then you better subscribe to the channel, right, Rachel?
Absolutely.
Subscribe to the channel, share the video, and there will be more fantastic conversations coming out too. But thank you for joining us.